You've been to public school, you tried, different schooling options. A lot of children have ADD, ADHD. They can't be in super large classroom sizes. And the parents that are constantly being called up to the school don't know what to do for their kids, financially cannot afford other options, or so they thought.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Founder to Founder podcast. I'm super excited to have Teshia McIver here from the Palmetto Navigate Ed. She is an ESTF implementation coordinator in South Carolina, and I'm so excited to have her on. So welcome.
Hi, Felicia. Thank you, Founder to Founder, for having me today. It is such an honor and a privilege anytime that I can get in front of parents and families and discuss ESTF, which is what it's called in South Carolina, which is the ESA in most other states.
Yeah.
I tell when I go out and do my speech about South Carolina's Education Scholarship Trust Fund, ESTF, I always say we go big or we go home in South Carolina. So we had to add some extra words in there. I'm thrilled to be here. So hopefully we can answer some questions, get some clarity out here about South Carolina, and just spread the word about how important school choice is for our community.
Yes. So let's go ahead and dive on in. Can you walk us through a real family you've worked with and what has changed for them?
So a real family situation has been several, and there's more common situations than most. So I can just kind of combine several together. So one of the biggest things is just the ability to have options. And what you find is a common situation is you've been to public school, you tried, different schooling options. A lot of children have ADD, ADHD. They can't be in super large classroom sizes. And the parents that are constantly being called up to the school don't know what to do for their kids, financially cannot afford other options, or so they thought. And so as I went around the state of South Carolina talking, not only just at private schools, but different events and stuff, you find the families who say, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know that there was $7,634 of my state tax money, as long as I don't, my income doesn't exceed 500% of the federal poverty line this year, you can apply. So this has opened up doors for parents to be able to send their children to private school, or if they, in South Carolina, the rules are, as long as you're not in your zoned public school, residentially zoned public school, your child can utilize the ESTF outside of the zone public school for fees, transfer fees, things that you may have, that fees you incur from going to your residentially zoned public school. In addition to that, you can also use it if your child goes to charter school. So the conversations have been that if it's choice for one, it needs to be choice for all. And not all children are created the same, and their needs are different. So in every scenario in which I talk to parents, it's always been where I didn't have any other choice but to make a different choice for my child.
That's so powerful that you said that, because choice for one should be choice for all. And a lot of families simply do not have choice. And these ESAs that are constantly being implemented and passed are giving more people options, which I love. So when most families think ESAs, in your experience, and they come to you, what do they typically think it is?
What they almost treat it like it's gonna hurt them in some type of way, or
Interesting.
it's gonna make their taxes higher, that they're taking from public school, or that they may not have the right to have it. So a lot of parents were already making financial sacrifices for their children to go to school choice options anyways. They just didn't know that they could have resources to help. So a lot of times what happens is, once I explain, those parents are like, you can see almost like a burden, like a whole release to come off of them. Like, oh my God, I've had parents, in tears, or just, so grateful that this is something, an ESA or ESTF, that's out here that can help them. Because the financial burden is real. I mean, whether you have one child or 5 children,
Mhm.
The cost of things have increased, and along with that, kids grow. It's a lot of cost. People say, so what is it that I can use it for if my child is out of their zone public school, or if they're at a charter school, they wouldn't necessarily need it. Well, there's fees, transfer fees, registration fees. You can use it for your sports activities. You can use it for tutoring. You can use it for transportation, up to $3,500 per year for transportation. You can use it for disability therapy. So I tell families, because not all private schools utilize the entire amount either.
Okay.
So there may be room, even if you're going to a private school, to use for disability therapy or just tutoring. So those are all things. Any of your testing, PSAT, SAT, you can use the ESA or the ESTF to pay for those things. Now, so that immediately you get families going from I'm not sure to sign me up.
Yes.
Where do I sign up? And they can't sign up fast enough. But it allows a family to have financial freedom in areas that otherwise they have been struggling.
And
So
one thing I want to point out that you mentioned, like paying for the PSAT and that kind of stuff, it's really giving kids access. So when you mentioned that, I remembered when I was a kid, like my parents couldn't pay for those practice exams and things like that. So now these children actually have access to practice for those exams so they can get into better colleges. And I think that's something that we have to highlight. And it goes beyond just like the elementary, middle school. This access follows them through their lives. So that's something powerful that I thought you said, like, because I was like, oh, I remember not being able to pay for something like that as a kid.
And then think about it. This is a K through 12. ESTF is for K through 12. So, starting at kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, you can use these resources to make sure that you make a different decision for you and your family. Tell
Hmm.
people all the time, when you are creating a safe space for your family and for your kids to receive their education. It's them and theirs, and you and yours.
Okay.
You have to do what's best for your family. And like I was referencing back to, from a financial perspective, who couldn't use $7,634 towards their children's education if they're already in a school choice option or thinking of making an option? It's very important that we utilize all of our resources, or even know. That's why my position as an implementation coordinator is so important, because so many times there's ESAs out there and no one knows about them, how to use it, any of that stuff. So it's important that the implementation part of it is there so that families truly understand, and providers, because I do a lot of training to the schools too about how to utilize the funds, or how to work with those parents, because the parents are in control of where they spend their money at. So
Yeah.
the money's paid quarterly to a class wallet. There's never any physical exchange of money. So everything's done through a class wallet, which is like a portal, a parent portal. And there's approved providers on there. Parents can suggest a provider. It's
Okay.
not just the providers that are on there. So if a child's been working with a certain therapist for an extensive amount of time, and we know a lot of times children they're not comfortable with change. So that parent can say, hey, to that provider, you can go on the website, the Department of Education's website, fill out the information and become a provider or service provider. And then that child can continue to work with said provider. The other twofold to that is, then now that provider's on Class Wallet. So if there is a family that doesn't have a provider, they can look that person up now and utilize that person as well. So it's been a very big help across the state of South Carolina to have a ESTF that's so flexible and user friendly for families. But if nobody knows how to use it, then what do? You don't use it.
Yeah.
So
You do. What are some common mistakes parents make early on with trying to access this program?
not having their documentation ready when it's time to apply, because we still have we're not universal in South Carolina. So this year we were able to increase to 15,000 scholarships. So when you're looking at, but you had 10,000 the year before, and so your renewing plus sibling families had priority over your 300% federal poverty line, previous year public school, and charter school, as well as that 300% federal poverty line. So that was your next priority group. So you had
Mhm.
already had families who plus siblings that were, already rolled over into the next year. Okay. So it was very important when that for this year, it was January 15th, when that window opened for parents to have their paperwork ready to go. And because your applications were accepted based on whenever you submitted all of your documentation, not
Yes.
just an application where it generates an application number through fax. It was once all of your stuff was turned in as well that allowed you to easily flow through the process.
A
So,
completed application.
completed
That's
application.
tagged as being applied.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that was one of the biggest challenges, and we had over 30,000 applications. So, this year, for the 26-27 school year. So, a part of spreading the word is also understanding that, this is a lot of families out here that are wanting or desiring school choice options as well. And the numbers, I tell people, we're in a supply and demand world. So we know we have a supply of 15,000, but now we can show we had a demand of over 30,000 families that were interested in the ESTF. This is the type of stuff we get to take back and show numbers to legislation when they're talking about possibly making it universal or increasing the number. You have to have the data. So the more we can get into our communities and make sure people are aware and the parents show up in numbers, the likelihood of, the ESTF in South Carolina to become universal, where we don't have to worry about the dollar amount or the number of people. We can have a little more flexibility.
When families actually get into the program and they start using the ESTF, like they need it for a transfer fee or something, is there anything that's harder than they expect when first using the ESTF?
So it's gotten a lot better. The biggest challenge initially was the providers
Mm.
understanding that the invoice for ESTF, it was one of those ones that needed to be simple and not complicated.
Yeah.
So initially last year, one of the biggest concerns or issues, that obstacles between provider and parent, was the invoice being set up correctly.
Okay.
And then, because what happens is the school invoices the parent submits through Class Wallet, and then Class Wallet pays the school direct.
Okay.
So you can't have an invoice with all of this clutter on it. They only need whatever the service of the ESTF, whatever they're paying. If it's tuition, then you need to have a tuition. If it's tutoring, you need to have a separate tutoring. So it was basically just training
Oh,
and making sure that the schools knew. And then this year, something that's a little different as well is testing. So last year we do, South Carolina requires testing for children, and they're all the approved tests are on the website. So the last year the parents submitted the test. This year, the Department of Education has opened it up for the schools to be able to submit the test scores.
uh-huh.
So that's something that'll ease for the parents from last year too. That was a little bit of a complication, getting the test scores, understanding how to upload them. Which is the same thing that happens that delays the application process as well, is the
Mm,
uploading the documentation. Everybody's not as computer savvy. So the key thing is making sure that the providers, the schools know your parents, open up these hubs and windows for them to be able to have that support from the school level as well. But I think like the tough part is kind of this was the first full year of the ESTF. So I think a lot of the little kinks in the chain have been kind of worked out some, but that was the biggest thing, uploading and test scores for
mhm.
invoices and test scores last year for parents. But as we in the 25-26 school year, the school now has the ability to upload the test score. So we shouldn't see that being an issue as much for the 26-27 school year.
That's awesome, and my, follow-up question was going to be what's better than you expect, but, like, the negative is already turning into a positive, and when I talk to parents, I always tell them, it's like, you have to give things time. We have to let kinks work themselves out because I think we're all new to this, right?
Right.
We're all new to this, so is there anything else that has improved as well outside
Well,
of
just
the
working with
ESP?
ESAs. So this is again, and I keep saying implementation coordinators are so important because
Yeah.
and then that relationship that you have between the Department of Education, if you have an implementation coordinator, it's kind of like the liaison that bridges the gap between the department and the providers and the parents. So you're able to turn things around a lot faster if you have someone, I say, boots on the ground out in the school, talking to the parents, then you're able to get that information back to the department a lot faster. You're able to work, the department's able to work their magic and get the information back out to the schools. It's not that you work for the Department of Education when you're an implementation coordinator, but you partner with instead of making it where it's a divided relationship. So that's where you see the speed turnaround too,
Nice.
where with your ESA or your ESTF to be able to help the families because that's what we have to keep the focus on. Like
Mm,
you said, the frustration or the things that are moving great, I would say having that relationship with your Department of Education where there's transparency and trust there, even though you're not working for the department, you work with the department to make sure that you're taking care of families. And they're not boots on the ground, so they don't know what's going on in real time. And that's where you have to make sure that you're being very diplomatic in the situations
mhm.
and transparent about what your position is and what the parents are saying and what the schools are saying, and that you're advocating for all of those things to come together to better your ESA or your ESTF.
Yes.
Mhm.
And one of the things that you said was like supporting the families. And we always talk about like education for kids, but we need education for families so they can properly support their children. When it comes to implementation, I don't think these programs would do as well without people in these support positions to help families because it feels very complicated as a parent. So being in Florida when I did the ESA for my kiddos, it felt very complicated going into it blind. But then once I started to watch the webinars and that kind of stuff, I was like, oh, this isn't so bad. This
Mhm.
isn't so bad anymore. So I think that piece is so important. What, in your opinion, states that don't have ESAs and support in place, like what are some things that they can learn from South Carolina?
I'll start again and say that relationship with your department, build that early. Start building that trust with your Department of Education or whomever runs your ESA because different states have different ways of that their ESA, but you all want to be partnerships, whether it's with a nonprofit. We have Outbridge that works with the counseling, et cetera, for families here in South Carolina as support too. So there's several different, areas working on the same issues, but we all have that one common goal. So I
Mhm.
guess making sure that as you partner and work together, that your ship is sailing in the same direction. Cause I can't pulling you back to shore and you're trying to go out, you know.
Yes, yes.
So right. And it's like, so you don't want that tug of war of having different initiatives as far as what the main and primary focus is, which is to get the information out there. So I think having a strategic plan, one of the things that
Mhm.
I was able to do was get into the schools and build those relationships. I didn't just have parent meetings. I also had provider school meetings separately with the administration where that they can ask questions about, hey, what's the best way? Of course, I'm not their school. Schools are
Mhm.
always going to be in control of their own school. My quote was always, if I were your school,
Yeah.
I can only tell you what may be a good idea or what I saw that was implemented well in another school, maybe with similar situations. But at the end of the day, the schools have, control over how they implement their ESTF for their school. But at the same token, I feel like having those separate meetings when you go out are so important. That way you're building trust and relationship with the families, and you're also building trust and relationship with the schools, which are the providers to the family. And then that way they know, hey, I can come to Tisha at Palmetto Navigate Ed and ask questions, and she'll try to bridge the gap to get me answers.
That's excellent. What are the challenges that providers and schools may be facing right now?
A lot of it was, so remember, I'll go back and say last year was our first full year.
Mm.
So last year was unique in that space that it was. So it was a matter of, does my school have enough ESTF participation to have separate people to work on ESTF? Or am I going to give this responsibility to someone else that may already have a lot of responsibility? So do I hire someone or, other people in the admin to help? Or how do I delegate it out? So it was mostly structure. How do I structure? And each school, of course, is going to be different depending on the number of students that you have that are ESTF participants. Or what do you anticipate? What do because I told schools, set a goal for how many ESTF students you would like to have, and then look at your staffing and how you can support it. Because there are some things that are different as far as the invoicing and the
Mm,
do's and the don'ts, and, being able to make sure that parents are navigating.
okay. When it comes to the ESTF, like there's always families that are probably falling through the cracks. What are some additional things that we can do as an implementation coordinator, as an advocate, as different states that we can do to find those families and further support them, in your opinion?
Biggest thing has been getting into the communities,
Mm,
building trust, getting connected with the right people to get into the communities that need the help. In the communities that need the help the most are where there's the most distrust for
tell us more.
ESAs or ESTFs. So you have to, as an implementation coordinator, respect history and understand that there are some things that have happened in the past that would make some parents, raise the eyebrow or two. Is this a safe option for me? And I have to remember, we have the inside information. So we're already comfortable. But when you're approaching families that are in less fortunate situations, they've had maybe negative experiences in the past, or organizations that are affiliated with families that
Mhm.
are in less fortunate situations have had maybe negative experiences as well. And so it's a matter of, everything is about a relationship. How are you approaching it? I tell the providers that I'm here to support any provider in South Carolina. So it's always very important for me to stay neutral, um, and place myself in environments where I can be, a liaison for a school that's already a provider. But I also am trying this summer to get into some community centers, to do some, if they're having events, set up a table, those type of environments in your local community centers, so that you can, when the kids are going to summer camp, what better time to catch the parents and say, hey, did you know that there's a ESA out here? Even though we are currently only taking interest, we have an interest list right now because our wait list is full,
Okay.
that we can start prepping people for a 27-28 school year.
Yeah.
It's not too early to start having those conversations with families, so that we can move beyond the people who know about it and reach those who really need an ESA as well, that think they're stuck and they don't have any other option.
So, Tisha, for the next 5 years, what do you hope to see your ESTF evolve to?
The first thing is, we really want universal.
Yeah. We need a
Okay.
laundry list of
Well,
things.
I mean, let's just knock it out the park and make it universal, where every South Carolina family has a choice. But I think, again, I always say I want to be able within these next few years to show the supply and demand. Even once we become universal, the work still isn't done. So you still have to make sure that in that space of becoming universal, universal that you are reaching the families who know nothing about choice. And it is amazing to me as much work that has been done for ESAs, the amount of families that are in the areas that really could use it know nothing about it. I'll tell you guys, I was at an event probably, I think it was last month, and it was a predominantly African American community event. And the difference was in that space, nobody knew about ESAs or ESTF. And I mean, it was probably about maybe 300 or more people in and out of that venue that day. And so, not that that's the only community that we're targeting, but when you can go into a community and see that there's no representation or knowledge of something, and then when you're in another community and you can see everybody knows, oh, if not, I got a cousin who applied, and
Yeah.
oh, I'm excited this year to apply. And then to go into an environment where nobody knew, it just let me know we've still got a lot of work to do the next couple of years to make sure we're getting into those spaces so that I want to walk into any space and any family go, oh, yeah, I know about it. I applied. I might be on the wait list, or it's universal now. So, yeah, I'm going to apply. So, those are the conversations I'm looking forward to having. We should become old news in a good way, though.
Yes. Yes.
It's like becoming a familiar face, and it's like, "Oh, I know her." It should be that simple for a ESA or a ESTF in South Carolina.
Yes. So to go ahead and wrap us up, if a parent's listening and they're feeling overwhelmed, what would you tell them to do? What's their first step?
So this year for 26-27 school year, the wait list is pretty much already established. I would want those parents to make sure that they're going to our website or the Department of Education's website. You can go to palmettonavigateed.org. Okay. On there, you can go to the site and you can explore, go to the parent tab and explore anything you would ever want to know as a parent. The site is created to be very user friendly for families so that during this season where we know that there's just an interest list that's being created, you can go ahead and start learning what you need to as a family for the 27-28 school year application window. For the families that are approved and signed up for the ESTF and ready to rock and roll for the 26-27 school year, please make sure you're working very closely with your schools. If you need me for anything, you can reach me at info at Palmetto, Palmetto, Navigate Ed, Navigated.org. And I can answer any questions that you may have about how to use your ESTF. If you're in a situation where you don't understand the quarterly payouts, I can make sure you have your schedule, your disbursement, your class wallet, any questions. If I don't know the answer, I can reach out and get the answer for you. But the biggest thing is, parents, you are not alone. It's someone that's an email or a phone call away. It's just a matter of you reaching out and letting us know that you need help, whether it be understanding the ESTF or how to use it or what to anticipate for next year. We don't know a lot about next year yet. We'll be in the planning that everything will get planned out after this legislative session ends. So more information to come what 27-28 will look like, but we're looking forward to having a very, very, very successful 26-27 year with the ESTF.
So thank you so much for coming and sharing everything about the ESTF and how you're supporting families, because it is so powerful having someone in your corner as a parent, because sometimes it can feel like such a lonely job. So thank you for the work that you're doing in South Carolina.
You're welcome. Thank you for creating a space for me to share. Again, if you have anyone that has questions, send them my way. I'll be happy to take care of it. That's what I'm here for as your implementation coordinator for South Carolina.
And I will definitely put all your information in the description of wherever anybody watches this. And thank you so much. Thank you, everyone out there, for watching Founder to Founder. And we will see you on the next one. Thanks so much.
Thank you.